Uh, those colleagues online and here in person, welcome to the International Conference on Children and Their Families using the Multiple Indicator Cluster Surveys. My name is Turgay Unalan, Statistics and Monitoring Specialist in Data Collection Unit of Data and Analytics Section, UNICEF, and I'll be chairing today's session on data use, evaluation, and policy analysis. My co-chair today is Enrique Delamonica, here in the room. He is a senior advisor in Poverty and Equity Unit, Data and Analytics Section, UNICEF New York headquarters. Before I introduce our speakers, a few words of housekeeping. This session is being recorded and will be hosted on the UNICEF Mix website and YouTube channel, as well as on the Bristol Poverty Institute YouTube channel, and also embedded on the Bristol Poverty Institute website after the event. By attending, you consent to be part of this recording. For those participating online, please ensure that you have added your name rather than being listed as guest, as we will be monitoring attendees and need to know who is asking our speakers questions. You will be able to ask questions via Zoom's Q&A, question and answers function, which can be found at the bottom of your screen. Due to time constraints, we may not be able to answer every question, but for in-person attendance here in Bristol, feel free to get in touch with the speakers after the session to continue your conversation. Also note that the chat function is not available to attendees online, so please use the Q&A function for your questions. Also, please be respectful. All events at this conference are being monitored, and we reserve the right to remove attendees whose comments are deemed offensive or derogatory. Today, in this session, we have 3 presentations, and given that we have only 1 hour allocated for the session, each presenter will have a maximum of 15 minutes to present. And after the end of these presentations, we will visit the questions asked and also give the presenters a chance to respond. The first presenter of this session the presentation is titled Uses of Mixed Data by the Planetary, Child Health and Enterics Observatory, and it will be presented in person by Josh Colston, who is here. And Josh is from University of Virginia, School of Medicine, USA, and I invite Josh to present the first presentation today. Thank you.
Okay. Hello everyone. Thanks so much for the introduction, and thanks so much for the opportunity to speak at this event. Yeah, my name's Josh Colston. I'm at the University of Virginia School of Medicine, and I'm here to talk about an initiative that we have there that we're setting up called Planeo, Planetary Child Health and Enterics Observatory. It's kind of a bioinformatics initiative. It incorporates data from a lot of different sources, and one of those sources is MIX. So I'm gonna try to keep the overview of the project brief, and then really focus in on how we're using MIX, the methods we're using and things. Okay, so this is just an introduction to me. I'm an epidemiologist and spatial demographer. These are the things I specialize in. I do a lot of work on climate, which is why I'm setting up a weather station in Ethiopia there. And then I do a lot of work down in Peru, where we have several disease surveillance projects in the Peruvian Amazon region. My research, apart from the Planeo, I'm involved in a large literature review for WHO called FERG, Acute Febrile Illness Surveillance. That's the thing you saw in Peru. And Springs is an initiative that will feed off of Planeo. If Planeo is about prediction of diseases, Springs is about projection into the future. Planeo is primarily concerned with quantifying the burden of enteric pathogens or diarrhea-causing pathogens. So this is a slide I like to start with. This is the causes of death in children. It's probably one that many of you are familiar with. Nice downward trend in all the causes of death, or most of them, since 1990. Diarrheal disease, which is our focus, is not really visible here, but you can pick it out there. So here we can see it's made a nice sharp decline from being the second leading cause of child death to being the fourth. So, you know, nice encouraging trend, but it's not a law of nature that it will continue to go in that direction. And it's, as it gets ever more focused in pockets of deprivation, we need to be able to target and identify those pockets. And the other thing to know about diarrheal disease, it's a syndrome characterized by a cluster of symptoms, but its underlying etiology can be a variety of different pathogens of different taxa, viruses, bacteria, and protozoa. And if you think about each of these bugs, they have different biologies. They're sensitive in different ways to the domestic environment and the wider environment and the climate. So what the focus of this is, because, you know, Mix's household surveys, I'm focusing more on the household level risk factors of enteric pathogen transmission. And, you know, I've got some examples here, just some snaps that I took from around our site in Peru. So water and sanitation, obviously a big determinant of enteric disease transmission. Here you can see the sort of canal or gully that serves as the all-purpose drainage and sewerage in many low and middle income countries, this one being Peru. This delightful child, it lives in a house and has a nice nurturing family, but she does live with earth floors on the floors of her house, and that can be a risk factor. And then many people do small-scale livestock rearing, and, you know, the poop from the livestock gets mixed in with everything, and it can lead to zoonotic transmission. And here we have pathogens down the side there, and different risk factors for different household level risk factors that I'm talking about. Hide, floating. So we can see that the viruses here, many of them are sensitive to improved sanitation. So improved sanitation, reducing the odds of a virus, but and also for bacteria. But covered floors, as in not bare earth, not so much for the bacteria, but definitely for the viruses we see there. And then for the protozoa, it's a mix of both, and, you know, surprisingly little effect of improved water there compared to sanitation and covered floors. Anyway, so the Planetary Child Health and Enterics Observatory, and Enterics being, you know, the catch-all term for enteric pathogens of the gut that cause diarrhea. We bring together data from, it's an independent participant data meta-analysis, so we bring together data from lots of different surveys that have already been conducted and published, and we put all that data together in a standardized format, and it has to be PCR diagnostics. We are able to geolocate them, and so we match them by date and location to climate data, and then by location to other environmental data sets, all with a view to making predictions. And so this is the epidemiological data, the sort of input data on the pathogens, where you can these days you can take a sample of poop from a kid, maybe that has diarrhea, or even an asymptomatic kid, and test using PCR for a panel of pathogens and say, what pathogens is this kid infected with? Because sometimes it can be multiple at a time. And so there's just a little bit of information about this, and this is the sort of outputs that we get. So far we've done a model of the bacterium Shigella. We were able to sort of make an animation of how it sort of undulates over the year, some seasonality metrics that we're able to plot and map. So we're sort of in the process of scaling this up to look at other pathogens and do the same approach to other pathogens, so that they're all comparable, and we can say, you know, which risk factors affect this pathogen and that pathogen, since there are many of them. And this will be disseminated through a web-based dashboard. So this is all in. We've actually published the protocol in PLOS One. There it is. So anyway, one of the figures in that paper is the data and process flow, and so where Mix fits in is we're creating this pooled survey database. So we have the study-specific databases, and then we build a pooled survey database that's coded in exactly the same way, and can sort of fill in information and be used for imputation. These are the subject and household level covariates, so you recognize them. Many of them are easily calculated and derived from mix, DHS, etc. data. So what we do is, if this is an example of a, just an illustrative example of a data set, we were talking, had a presentation about Lao earlier, so I've chosen Lao. If you imagine there's some missingness, like in the sanitation there, intermittent missingness, and then some variables that are just entirely missing, like hygiene, crowding here. What we do is we take the same data from the same stratum, rural Saravan, from mix and DHS, and we code it all in exactly the same way, and we append it to the epidemiological data sets, and then we sort of this is all because the studies collect different kinds of data. Not all of them have all of the variables, and for some of them, many of them are missing. So we sort of, where the data is not available, we build it based on the sort of risk factor profile of the survey stratum in which each individual is living. And then to date, we so you know you can see here all these these are all the different risk factors for Shigella, and you can see that the ones down on the bottom here with quite high, quite largest effect sizes are all household level variables. And then the other way in which we use them is interpolation. So having got the sort of the coefficients from a regression model that correspond to the effects of those things on the pathogen transmission, we then need to be able to have the prediction data set to fill in and predict it to areas where it's not been observed. So we're building models of each one, sort of like the water quality one that we saw, or safely managed water one that we saw earlier. We're taking surveys, mix and DHS and country-specific surveys, and putting those into spatially explicit models. The way we georeference mixed clusters, we have a kind of a hack that I've developed. It's a little bit sort of crude. So if we have the survey strata from Lao, for example, and then we get populated settlements from humanitarian OpenStreetMap, and then so what it does is randomly assigns a mixed cluster to a settlement within the same survey stratum with probability proportional to size. So it's kind of like matching it to something that's hopefully probably quite like the actual place where it was. Very crude, but and you know, so we're very welcoming of these GPS data sets that are coming out from many new mix surveys. But you know, for DHS, the sort of algorithm is, if it's a DHS where they've got GPS, we use the GPS. If it's a DHS or a mix that don't have the GPS, then we use this this sort of cheat hack. And then we're fitting in the models to predict predicted coverage of these sort of interventions or risk factors. So this is the predicted prevalence of finished floors in low and middle income countries based on household survey data, and you know, we have environmental covariates that feed into it. And so all the household level data is just one of three types of data that go into these models of pathogen probability. And we have the static environmental ones, which many of you will be familiar with. This is enhanced vegetation index. And then the hydrometeorological ones are time varying, so we can match that by date on which the sample was collected, as well as location, and do some sort of lag, take into account lags, summarize it over a lagged window. So in conclusion, you know, mix is a source of critical data inputs for Planeo, the Planeo initiative, and you know, hopefully it can serve as a use case for the data products that the program provides, that we all rely on for our work and that we all have come to depend on. So with that, I will thank all the collaborators, and I will thank everyone who made this event possible, and I will also thank the countless respondents and field workers working throughout the world tirelessly on mix and similar household surveys. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Josh. This was really interesting, and I'm sure we'll have some questions. Just to remind you that you should be able to open the Q&A function of Zoom, and you can write down your questions so that we can monitor, and at the end of the other presentations, we may have a chance, we may give a chance to the presenters to respond to them. And the second presentation today is titled Evaluative Use of Mixed Data in Latin America and the Caribbean to Inform Programs and Policies. And it will be presented by Liliana Carvajal, and also we have other colleagues, other co-authors of the presentation with us, Michael Kraft and Felipe Diaz online. So please, Liliana, the floor is yours, and you have 15 minutes to present.
Thank you. Good afternoon, colleagues, and good morning, colleagues in the Latin American region who have connected today to co-present with me. My name is Liliana Carvajal, and I work in UNICEF for the Regional Office for Latin America and the Caribbean as Data and Monitoring Manager, and also in my role, I am a Regional Coordinator for the mixed surveys in the region. I'm joined today by my colleagues Michael Kraft, our Evaluation Advisor in the Regional Office, and our colleague Felipe Diaz, who's Monitoring and Evaluation Officer in the UNICEF office in the Dominican Republic. Our other colleague Alejandra Beccaria was unable to join because she's presenting in parallel in an online session at the moment, but she's also contributing to this work. So our presentation today, we're going to co-present with Michael and Felipe. I'm going to start, and we're going to split up the time. Our presentation is a little different from the previous ones, as we are not conducting at the moment secondary data analysis or using the microdata to conduct analysis. Rather, we're looking into the different uses in terms of enhancing the evaluative use of mixed data in the region of Latin America and the Caribbean to inform programs and policies. So we're looking at the use side of data for the specific purpose of programs and policies. Why? Because the strengthening of linkages between mixed and evaluative uses as part of the evidence-based policy-making cycle in the Latin America and the Caribbean region, or in any other region for that purpose, can promote greater results for children through evidence-driven policies and programs, right? So we want to promote the use of surveys not just to be in a report or, academic purposes is great, as we're seeing today, but we want to promote it more for policymakers in the region. So by providing this evidence, we are hoping that this is going to inspire further use of this really rich data. And this is tied to the UNICEF data strategy, which aims at data to be used for results for children. So we're exploring the different ways mixed results have been used in countries in the region to really inform and improve the lives of children in the region. So we have created or defined the evaluative use of mix into 4 potential types of use, which are instrumental, conceptual, mobilization, and for wider influence. My colleague Michael is going to go about this in more detail. But basically, such use cases are fed through various evidence generation processes and products, including but not limited to research, analysis, assessments, and evaluation. In Latin America region since 2015, and we have used 2015 as the baseline for this analysis, given that that's the baseline for the Sustainable Development Goals framework period. UNICEF has has supported the implementation of 18 mixed surveys in the region. You can see them in blue on the screen. For this state of this analysis, we have worked with Dominican Republic and Argentina, but we are exploring the possibility of including more examples from other countries in the region. As mentioned before, we have also framed this in the basic principles of UNICEF data work, of which mix is an important pillar of this data strategy. In this UNICEF framework, we start with data demand, supply, and use, recognizing how important it is for countries. Then we promote data investments to support government data systems and not to supplant them, right? We work side by side with countries to implement these surveys. We don't conduct the surveys for them. We provide technical assistance so that the national statistical offices or partners can implement the surveys. In this framework, also, effective data systems must function both within across sectors, and different data areas are appropriate for different uses and contexts. And as we say in-house, data for children is a team sport, and working with partners is essential to create value. And partners are us in the academic sector, in the international agencies, but very importantly, within governments for the appropriate use of the data. Michael, you can continue.
Thank you, Liliana. Good morning, or good afternoon, everyone. So very much building on Liliana's point about the generation of mix being hand in hand with government partners. We wanted to frame the use of mixed data here within a kind of simplified schema for evidence policy making. And so you see a kind of non-linear cycle that we put forth and adapted here, where from the agenda setting side up into moving through to policy formulation, implementation, and finally policy outcomes, there's various entry points for mixed data to be leveraged, and that's the generation of evidence from the outset to set agendas, but also to formulate policies, define frameworks, and then finally also in a more evaluative sense, classically, assess policy implementation and outcomes. So we'll use this policy making cycle to frame the case studies and the use of mixed data within each country context. Next slide, please. We're also very interested in how countries are able to generate evidence using mixed data from a systems perspective, and in particular here, evaluation systems as kind of one of the key components of where data can be used within the national policy making space. And so we wanted to present here a recent initiative that's been going on for the past few years, but is regularly generating information around evaluation systems here, both in the Dominican Republic and Argentina, the two case studies, which demonstrate some of the key factors for both national capacity and eventually mixed use potential. So we have evaluation quality, offer different multi-stakeholder spaces and institutional structures that are really kind of driving the ability for government partners to leverage data. So these are all important kind of contextual factors that will influence how mixed data can be leveraged. Next slide, please. Moving into now looking at comparative assessment of mixed use at the regional level. We are next slide, please. Looking at an assessment framework that, as Liliana was indicating, articulates 4 different use dimensions, and so this uses UNICEF's role of M&E and evidence policy making publication as a starting point, and these are not mutually exclusive, but can be very much mutually reinforcing. In fact, as Josh was just showing, right, there's a lot of research potential which falls into conceptual and mobilization use here, where we're using mixed data to change our understanding of different trends, and also as an instrument of persuasion for advocacy, and then also the instrumental dimension of use, in which mixed data can be leveraged for decision making in a very concrete manner within government spaces. And finally, beyond the more institutional lens, looking for wider influence that can be demonstrated through mix usage. Next slide, please. And so within those, across those four dimensions, rather, we articulated here a typology of evaluative use, and this can be reflected in and beyond Latin America and the Caribbean region, in how mixed data is leveraged and evidence is generated from a more rapid kind of type of process or product on the left, where you're using data for descriptive analytics, etc., to a more rigorous use within the evaluative space, using mixed data for assessments and evaluations. And so again, we have four different use dimensions, and also many different types of products and processes that can demonstrate and indicate evaluative use. Before passing it over to Felipe around our country cases, just to mention here too that we also see how different factors will influence this use at a country level, both from an institutional perspective. So we were looking at evaluation systems as a key dimension, but also how UNICEF and its partners are managing relationships with key stakeholders that might be using evidence. How also there's pre-existing capacity for analysis of this, and generation of statistics at a national level, and also contextually speaking, whether or not there's a data culture, a political commitment or policy demand for using mixed data. So this effort really looks across a range of both enabling and constraining factors in that respect. Over to you, Felipe. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 5 minutes left, Felipe and Michael, so let's continue.
Okay. Let's do my best. These two cases we want to share so far, because as Liliana mentioned, we want to increase it and review.
Felipe, sorry, it's a little hard to hear you. Can you fix a little bit your mic?
Louder, you mean, or change the mic? See.
The mic sounds like in a box.
Can you hear me better now?
Much better, thank you.
Much better. Okay. So we're starting with these two cases, Dominican Republic and Argentina. But we will eventually grow the analysis and the overview, as Liliana mentioned. So and on this evaluative use, I mean the use of evaluations together with these key indicators coming from mix, what we are seeing is, for instance, in the case of the Dominican Republic, is how the mix survey has become the main national source of SDGs and many of the key development indicators in the country, especially, of course, those are coming from national surveys, but also that since we have around 15 years working with the National Statistics Office, we already have a very strong collaborative work and doing several mix so far. But these have been possible also because the national program of household surveys has opened to receive this mix, how they call version, every 5 years. So, and nowadays, and as part of the policy demand and contextual things that Michael was mentioning, the program and the multi-year budgeting program and the strategical plan for the statistical system is expecting and has in their plans to have this mix every 5 years. So this is already like embedded in the planning and data production of the country. But of course, part of the situation always is that even though the government is every year putting more money, I mean, investing and knowing the relevance of investing on in general household surveys, but in specific mixed surveys, which are more expensive than the regular ones, the financial gap is always a challenge. I mean, and we have been seeing it in the last 2 years and a and next year also. So, but there is this increasing empowerment and appropriation of the survey. I mean, mainly, and that's the part of this paper, it is because of the integration of the mixed data into the national policies or national programs that needs this data to monitor and to eventually evaluate if it's the early childhood service coverage, the violent discipline methods, or maternal and neonatal mortality, legal identity through birth registration, early motherhood, children out of school, and early unions, which is the next slide, please. I will just make a little bit of a zoom very quick on that.
Yes.
It started with the mix 2014 when no one knew about the topic, and because of the data, all the advocacy strategies were able to start. Then the formulation of the policy became a lot more strong because of the data coming from mix 2019. And now the national policy is using it, has monitoring goals, but also has the eventual evaluative goals of child marriage and early unions reduction. So that's the case of the Dominican Republic. So then, speaking about the case of the Argentina, it is very relevant to highlight that if the contextual and institutional situation of Argentina, they have data for different sources, but this mixed data provides the multi-dimension view of data from one single source that allows policymakers and people to actually understand the intersectionalities of situations coming from the data. And the challenge, the main challenge towards that, towards mix and evaluative use, is that this household survey is not institutionalized or calendarized into in a periodical or an institutional framework. So it lacks that right now. But they have been, for instance, one big example is the 8 rapid surveys implemented from the beginning of the pandemic, 2020, until this year, that have been able to collect analytical data from the dimensions very relevant to understand what's happening in the country. And the specific or in-deep case, which is the next slide, please, is this concurso, this contest of how to promote and disseminate the use of the surveys, the use for policy-informed data, and through this contest that is aimed for government, yes, but especially among academics, civil society, and researchers to use the data and to produce papers based on mix. So 19 papers were received, 10 were selected for publication, and they have been very much used in topics like social protection, adolescent education, multidimensional poverty, which is being presented in parallel to this paper, and early childhood and care and violence as well. So this is really helping into the evaluative use of the data.
Thank you, Felipe.
So now it's Liliana, right? Okay.
Thank you, that's great. Michael, you want to wrap up? We have
Sure.
less than a minute.
Yes. I think we're over time. So in 30 seconds, just to summarize here, we have a very diverse set of institutional and contextual factors in the policy-making space, and for that reason, we see a lot of different dimensions of use, and also how mixed data can be leveraged both across instrumental as well as mobilization or advocacy purposes and beyond. The use of mixed data for policy formulation and agenda setting from these 2 cases were the most common, and we believe that trend will remain if we look more broadly across the region through this exercise. And we also see a lower use of mixed data in assessing policy outcomes, and therefore, as we point out in the last bullet point here, there's a potential opportunity to complement global mixed guidance in really exploring how this might be able to be enhanced across the region and beyond. So the next steps for us is really defining refining our analytical framework further, and we look forward to comments from you today, widening our geographic scope, and then producing lessons that we hope, for lack of a better term, will be useful for mix generation in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Liliana and colleagues. So conscious of time, I want to proceed to the last presentation, last but not least. The third presentation is titled Policy Lessons from Mixed Data on Children's Status in Self-Reported BISP Families in Punjab, Pakistan. And it will be presented by Taj Muhammad, who is with us online. Taj is from Government College, University of Lahore, Pakistan. Taj, the floor is yours. Please share your screen.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Taj here from the Department of Economics, GC University, Lahore, and I am honored to present my work at the Bristol Poverty Institute conference. And the topic of my presentation is policy lessons from the multiple indicator cluster survey data on children status in self-reported BISP families in Punjab, Pakistan. The next slide is for outline, and outline states that the motivation, introduction of the Benazir Income Support Program, then drawing of the policy lessons, then some introduction to multiple indicator cluster surveys, results from the multiple indicator cluster surveys, findings, multiple indicator cluster surveys data, concerns about BISP indicators, policy lessons from multiple indicator cluster surveys, beneficiaries, and some improvements and conclusion at the end. Motivation for this presentation comes from the social protection programs that are initiated by the governments or organizations to reduce the poverty, vulnerability, and inequality by ensuring the individual and the households have access to basic income services and opportunities. These programs basically provide financial or in-kind assistance to the people, helping them to cope up with economic and social shocks. These programs also address both immediate and long-term risks related to economic shocks, health emergencies, and natural disasters, so that they may prevent the vulnerables falling deeper into the poverty. These programs also reduce the dependency and also responsible for breaking the poverty cycle, so that the people may spend their life with dignity and honor. Certain social programs, like those promote education and health, contribute to the development of human capital of the specific nations. So there are various types of the conditional and unconditional programs. Then labor market programs, universal basic income subsidies, and social insurance programs. Various programs across the globe have been introduced, and Benazir Income Support Program is one of those programs, social safety net program, that was launched in 2008 in Pakistan. Benazir Income Support Program is basically an unconditional support program, but has some conditional component as well. One of them is an education focused CCT, and the other one is nutrition focused CCT for pregnant women and young children. Now, this how we draw the policy lessons for Pakistan. Following data sets are available in Pakistan to draw the policy lessons in Pakistan, in which Benazir Income Support Program data is available there. Pakistan Demographic Household Survey is available, multiple indicator cluster survey, and Pakistan social and living environment surveys. But this presentation is prepared with the self-reported Benazir Income Support Program families in the 3 mixed waves, 2011, 14, and 17, and suggests important policy way forward to enhance the mix quality. Mixed indicator cluster survey was developed in mid 1990s, and now in more than 120 countries are prevalent. Therefore, 399 mixed surveys and 261 mixed datasets are available across the globe. Pakistan is one of the 120 countries where mix is conducted at the subnational level in Punjab, Pakistan. So here are the results, and for discussing the results, first I want to inform you about the indicators that I have selected for the policy lessons. Those indicators are education, healthcare, and nutrition. In education, I have chosen highest level of education attended at the time of the survey, and in healthcare, child has diarrhea in last 2 weeks and child received any vaccination. And in nutrition, I have selected weight for age Z-score, and all these indicators are common indicators that are available in 3 mixed wave series. Here is table 1 that shows how the self-reported BISP indicator across over the years reporting the number of beneficiaries. Here is the trend that we can assess, that in 2011 there is 3,406, and in 2014 2,649, and 2017 466 families are who reported that they are the recipient of the Benazir Income Support Program. But the data is showing declining concern and declining trend that is a serious concern for the researchers and the stakeholders. Second slide about the result shows that a majority of the households in the poorest group, and then the second income group, while in fourth and richest group, people are also receiving the Benazir Income Support Program. That shows some corruption element in the program. Table 3 shows the indicator of the education, that is gender-wise highest level of the education attended in the best beneficiaries. And these this indicator at the primary school, preschool, primary school, middle, and matric shows the declining trend in gender disparities, which also is a very serious concern for the policymakers for the education, for the early childhood educations. Table 4 shows the child health, and the indicator is diarrhea in the last 2 weeks. That is also worsening condition in the surveys, and has an important lesson for the policymaker to introduce a wash and hygiene scheme, so that the respondents and their children may live safe life. Table 5 is actually the vaccination of the children, and this table shows the serious concerns, because we have limited mixed respondents in the multiple indicator cluster surveys, and in those mixed multiple indicator cluster surveys, there is a missing data in the mix elements. The steric here on the values shows the missing values, and we know that the missing values create bias in the results. And when policymakers base their results on these informations, then those policy-based informations may be not correct. Table 6 is about the child nutrition, and there is a significant, strongly significant malnutrition persistent in the region in Punjab across the Benazir Income Support Program beneficiaries. Next slide is our finding. In findings that there is a reduction in overall number of the self-reported beneficiaries from 2011 to 2017. Over time, the proportion of beneficiaries from higher income groups decreased, which just improved targeting of the poorest. There is significant decrease in the number of children attending all education level over time, particularly from 2014 to 2017. While there is a gender gap in the education attendance is relatively small, but both male and female attendance decline over the time. That is a serious concern for the policymakers. The incidence of the diarrhea remained relatively stable for 2011 to 2014, with a slight increase in 2017, though the overall sample size in 2017 is significantly low. While vaccination rates appear low, with a notable decline in 2014 compared to 2011, but showing some improvement in 2017, though the sample size was very small. The WASTE score shows a trend of malnutrition among children, with a notable decline in score from 2011 to 2014, indicating worsening nutritional situation. And there is a need to invest in the nutritional program so that the malnutrition may reduce and the nutrition level of the children in Punjab should be increased. Our results show mixed data concerns about the BISP indicator. The sharp decrease in the number of reported BISP beneficiaries over the year raises concerns about the consistency and the reliability of the data. And this reliability and consistency concerns give the inaccurate picture of the actual situations. And there is a concern for the subsequent policy decision based on this information. Missing data can lead to the biased results. This could hinder the ability to make valid inferences and weaken overall the credibility of the survey finding. Here are some policy lessons. UNICEF should investigate the reasons for the decline in the number of beneficiaries for strengthening the outreach efforts to enhance the coverage. There is a dire need for the UNICEF because the UNICEF is spending resources for collecting and monitoring the welfare data of the children and women. And here, for the one indicator that is the important indicator, that is the indicator of the social protection program, the actual data of the BISP program is increasing, actual beneficiaries decreasing, but the multiple indicator cluster surveys, the number of beneficiaries, number of self-reported beneficiaries in the multiple indicator cluster surveys are decreasing. That there is a serious concern about the policymaker, and UNICEF should focus on this issue seriously. Here are some improvements in the mixed quality data, enhanced data collection methodology, address data gaps and missing values so that biased results should be minimized. Strengthen data verification and validation. Verification of the data and validation of the data should be matched with the National Socioeconomic Registry and the NADRA data sets so that the data enumerators are fully trained so that they may extract the full information from the respondents from which they are with whom they are conducting the interviews. Utilize the technology for the data collection and analysis, ensure comprehensive coverage of the BISP indicators. The next slide is for the conclusion, and the conclusion is that the BISP program effectively targets the poor segments of the population, but requires improved outreach and targeting, especially in the urban areas due to declining number of the reported beneficiaries. Nutritional, educational and nutritional intervention should be applied so that the outreach of the program and the educational standard of the children and the nutritional outcomes should be improved. Strengthening self-reported mixed-based data collection and reassessment process is crucial to ensure accurate coverage and to develop more effective social policies. Thank you so much for listening me. Kind regards.
Let's proceed with the questions then until we see Taj. So he's not online for the time being. Over
there are
to.
no questions online. I don't know if there are questions here.
Okay.
I have a couple of comments, but there is a question here. Go ahead, Esther.
Do we use this?
Question for Josh. Thank you very much for the presentation. I get the feeling. Oh yeah.
You have practice with this.
Okay, so yeah, thank you for the very interesting presentation. I get the feeling it's just touching the surface of the work you've been doing. But in 15 minutes, it's very difficult to chat. But I was especially interested in the effects you show of the drinking water on different diarrhea outcomes. And I was wondering if you also looked at, you looked at improved. I was wondering if you also looked at other, let's say like drinking water availability or other aspects of safe drinking water.
So before you answer, I want to check that there is no other question. And I also have a question for you.
Sure, yeah.
No other question?
Thank you, Josh. Great study and great use of mixed data. That's very exciting to see.
Thank you.
I was wondering about as you know, like the diarrhea-related questions within mix have a lot of like seasonality on them, right? Because they are not all. They are the time of the year where they are conducted is pretty random across countries, right? The teams avoid rainy seasons just because it's hard to get into the places, but other than that. We use the estimates for diarrhea very carefully, not as measures of prevalence, precisely because it varies a lot depending on the time of the year when the data is collected. So I'm sure you know about that. So I was wondering, in your models, how do you account for that seasonality? But I wasn't sure if you actually use the prevalence of diarrhea because I saw all the improved water and use of water and education. So I'm like, first of all, did you use that?
Yeah.
So how do you account for seasonality?
More questions? Well, we're going to stack up the questions.
Yes, but I think I have the last one because I don't see any more hands. No, first of all, fantastic. I really liked how you put mix in the center of where it is playing the mixed data, the critical role. You talked a lot about what we do, right?
Yes.
Which is you and your team. So the question is my question is related to that. Are you working with governments? Are you working with policy analysis kind of thing, and if you don't, which is possible, right? Do you have like a working paper series, like a policy analysis working series, or something besides the stuff that you showed us that is very interesting?
Okay.
I think you can speak from there.
I think this is mic'd up here, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Wow. Should I do them in order or reverse order?
Whichever you want.
So,
as long as you are quick.
Okay, so the policy aspect. So, you're right. I was saying we. Honestly, it's kind of just me and some students.
Is it we?
Yeah. So that's the we're talking about. And I'm not a policy expert. I'll be honest. I'll be perfectly honest with you. It's a huge gap at the moment. It's something that I'm aware of and I want to build on, but at the moment we just don't have the resources. What we do is try to, the investigators from the studies that we incorporate into the database, we try to keep them involved and informed, but really involving wider decision maker communities and things has not been possible so far. When I apply for the next big grant, I'm going to write a huge budget line in that for all that. The diarrhea thing, yes. So that's the key thing. We don't use our diarrhea or enteropathy outcomes don't come from mix or DHS. They come from the studies themselves. So we know, on a given day that a stool sample was tested for a pathogen, whether it was positive or not, and there is seasonality to that, and that seasonality is specific to the pathogen species and to the location, and we've dealt with it in a couple of ways in different papers. It's kind of an ongoing thing, but yeah, it's a good point. And Esther, was there an, oh, and then
yeah.
Esther, and then back to another question, yeah, was about, sorry, can you remind me?
Outcomes, like different outcomes, oh no, sorry, no, looking at effects of different aspects on safe drinking water.
Yeah. So we're kind of constrained by, you know, we're getting our epidemiological data by partnerships with different studies who collected their data, not even really envisioning that one day it would be thrown into this huge database. And so they've all collected their data in different ways, coded their sanitation variables differently and things, and we can just about boil it down to improved, unimproved, covered, not covered, of flaws, you know. And that's about as far as we can standardize it. So that's kind of where we're very limited in that respect. So yeah, that's why we're trying to do it a little bit more like going down into like groundwater sources of water, because there's some evidence that that's protective against some viruses, but that's about as far as we can go. Yeah. And there was another question from you.
No, I think that was it, from what I remember.
Okay.
So any questions for Liliana and her team? I have some comments and questions, but I don't want to be the first one. Keep on thinking, keep on thinking.
Everything was super clear, I know. No questions.
Okay, I have a couple of comments, but another thing, Josh, where are you? Yes, I see a lot of relationship between what you were doing and some of the presentations in the morning, including some of yours. So I would say talk to them, because they are already doing some of that. And talk to the mixed team. Yes, absolutely. Good, good. So questions for Liliana. I have a couple of comments. First of all, just to say publicly something I told her in person. For you outside of UNICEF, maybe this is not striking at all, but the fact that this is a presentation prepared by colleagues sitting in different countries, collaborating, and actually, from a headquarters perspective, even in different divisions, because Liliana is sitting in data, Michael is sitting in evaluation, and the fact that it is cross-divisional, cross-country collaboration is very uncommon in UNICEF, but very welcome. We should promote and do more of this. I think it was really good to show the importance of the consistency of the work of MIX, especially the example in Dominican Republic, where first the topic was introduced in a round, it was not properly picked up, but then when it came up in a second round, it started to have some impact in terms of public conversation, government interest, and sometimes we forget that. We think that, okay, we did a mix, all problems are solved, but it's this element of time of the recurrent rounds and presenting the evidence once and again, and even a third time until things pick up. I think, especially for people working on policy analysis, we tend to forget this important element of time. And my only final point, also in terms of the Argentina example, the flexibility that MIX provides. Some of the modules were used in survey, in rapid surveys. They did a competition to use MIX. The fact that MIX can be used in so many different ways, besides the traditional reports we always do. I think those are all really, really great examples. So I want to congratulate the team.
Thank you.
Oliver is going to disagree with me.
Thank you.
Sorry. Not at all disagree. Just one question around the so I really like the classification, everything. Really great to see the use of mix for that purpose. I just wondered where you see the biggest challenges of using mix if you do want to go more on that kind of evaluation route. If it's more like the granularity of the data and the limited sample size, that you can't really dive down into a certain region where there might have been a policy program being implemented. Is it the gap between surveys? Just to understand what the challenge is and how you try to overcome that.
I can start and Michael can elaborate more on the evaluation side. So Michael, I'll start a little bit and then you can elaborate on the evaluation side. But one of the challenges that we have at UNICEF, let's say, or with the countries is that implementing a mixed survey is really a titanic effort. It takes years, it takes a lot of money, it takes a lot of human power, and then when the survey is done, it's like, whoa, everybody is ready to move on because it's been gigantic, right? And then that extra effort of actually using for program implementation, we're very excited that it's used in the academia, for what examples of what we're seeing today. But in countries as such, it's used not as we would like to. So this is an effort to really provide examples, typology as to how it could be used. For evaluative purposes, one challenge is also that, the data is what it is, the indicators are what they are, but for evaluation, it has to respond to specific evaluative questions. So that's why we're trying to come up with a framework that helps inform some evaluative purposes, but let me ask Michael to elaborate on that because he's our senior evaluation advisor in the region. Michael?
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's, I can hear myself a little bit. Okay. Yeah, I think that's a great question because we are seeing across at least these two cases and presumably the region more broadly, very little use for evaluative purposes. And I think the design in the first case of policies with kind of a perspective of mixed data is probably one of the biggest challenges. So if you don't include, for example, in your indicators or broad kind of policy objectives an alignment to what will be measured through mixed data, then you can't use it obviously to understand your policy implementation. And then if we look at kind of the more classic evaluation criteria of relevance, effectiveness, efficiency, nominally we'll be able to use mixed data for looking at policy effectiveness, right? To see what kind of outcomes have been achieved across the different socioeconomic dimensions that are measured. But again, as Liliana was saying, if we don't have an alignment in the policy cycle with the period that the mix is being collected, as one of our colleagues in Peru pointed out when we were providing this presentation earlier last week, then you also have a clash in the timing there. And beyond that, I think what we see in the cases that were presented today is that the agenda setting is kind of the most direct and applicable use in the academic space. And so if we are really trying to link the academic space with the kind of the policy making space, then we have to make that kind of more grounded connection to the design of our policies or programs with mix in mind.
Thank you, Michael.